Hi there, my lovely writing friends. Are you in the mood to learn of a few hacks that will help you improve your fiction? We all want to make it better because no matter how much we write, we find ourselves stuck in the same patterns. And I've got to admit, I've actually got some use out of a couple of these tips myself. So hopefully, if you want to learn about the 10 writing hacks that will instantly improve your fiction writing, stick around. The first one, and this was actually one I really struggled with, was cut the fluff. Basically, less is more. What you want to do is you want to eliminate unnecessary words. When I first started writing, my editor had a field day with cutting out phrases like "in the moment" or I can't think of many others because I have eliminated them from my writing now. But what I suggest you do if you find this difficult, and I've heard this from other authors, is write the way you want to write in your voice, excuse me, the way your words flow, and then go back and self-edit. You want to look at making sure that you're getting rid of any redundant phrases or those weak modifiers. Instead of saying something like, "Oh, he was very happy," try saying "he beamed," or even "he grinned" is better than that. And then also keep an eye out for words like "just," "really," "that," that is a big one, and "kind of," because those words don't add much value to the prose that you're writing. Now, I will add a clarifier here because sometimes it's necessary for dialogue. If your character is the type of person that uses those words, then definitely leave them in dialogue. But otherwise, pull them out. Now, the second one is one that so many people struggle with, and I could probably do a whole video on it by itself, but it's actually really simple. Hack number 2 is show, don't tell. I have seen Reddit post after Reddit post. I've seen author questions after author questions. What do you mean by show, don't tell? Basically, what you want to do is you want to talk about the senses. A really easy one to think of about that is something like, "She was angry." You don't say "she was angry." You say her fist clenched, or her jaw tightened, or she glared, or she did things that showed that she was angry instead of saying she was angry. This applies too in words where your characters feel something. Instead of saying your character felt pain, say something like, "It was as if it was if a knife was going into their gut," or something like that. What you're wanting to do when you show something is you are using your senses of sight, sound, smell, touch, and taste. So instead of writing that typical "it was a dark and stormy night," describe how the wind howls. Describe how the branches of a tree scrape against the windows, and how the ceiling shook when the thunder crashed overhead. Help your readers feel what you were saying. So perhaps I should say feel, don't tell, but no, the term is show, don't tell. It adds more depth to your writing. Another hack, which is really good at helping you to avoid clunky sentences or awkward dialogue, or if things are sort of phrased the wrong way, read your work out loud. Now, clearly, you probably don't want to do it when anybody else is around, but if you read your work out loud, or even get one of those text-to-speech things to do it for you, you can hear, well, actually, no, because they're AI, so that probably wouldn't work. But if you read your work out loud, you will pick up when you stumble over a sentence, or it feels awkward, or it might just be that the sentence is too long. Is there some way that you can cut it a bit? so that the words will flow more naturally instead of sounding like an academic essay. Because, you know, if a line is going to feel stiff, then chances are it is. Imagine, especially in dialogue, would you hear somebody say what you've written in real life? And so really apply that to your own work. And that leads us to hack number 4, which is killing the adverbs. Almost, not all of them. You do need some of them. But adverbs are words like quickly, suddenly, angrily. Use words, do a search and take out those words that end with ly, or see if you can find another way of writing them. Because you could say something like, oh, he walked quickly. But you can say just the same thing and add a bit more depth by saying he hurried or he strode. Because if you write stronger verbs, then your writing's going to be stronger as well. There are cases where quite often, new authors in particular, do say something like whispered softly or ran quickly. If you think about it, a whisper is already soft, so it's not needed. A sprint is already fast. So try and cut those words out, or at least find a way of rewriting them. The hack number 5 is the one that I live by, and I can testify to the fact that it works. Write every day. Consistency when you're writing a fiction novel, whether it be 30K, 35K, or 120K, it doesn't matter. Consistency matters. You can write as little as 100 words a day, and that book is going to keep going. What is more important is that if you're writing in your story every day, your mind, like say you did 200 words, your mind is still going to be thinking about your story after you've left it alone and you're doing something else. You might be folding, washing, or digging in the garden, or doing whatever it is you do. But your mind is still working on your story in the background of your mind. And when you come to write the next day, it will be so much easier, and you'll probably find that you'll get more done. The best thing to do to achieve this is just fit it into your schedule somewhere, even if it's just 10 minutes. Just find 10 minutes, and it doesn't matter what else is going on, that 10 minutes you're just going to write, and you stick with it. And this is how you progress to where writing becomes second nature. I actually feel bad now if I don't write in a day. And I've got to admit that I took my habits came from starting on NaNoWriMo back in 2013. Now, I know they're closed, and for good reason, but though that discipline of writing 3,000 words a day, which I started back when I first started my writing career, has really kept up with me. Like for me, it just keeps me going. And I do. If I'm doing something else and I haven't written in a day, I actually feel bad. And that's actually a really good way to be, because it means it's a habit that's stuck. Hack number 6 is a little bit more different, because it's giving your characters unique voices. But I want to add a bit of a qualifier here too. Don't go all out trying to make somebody sound like they've come from another country or things like that, unless it's applicable to the story. I've seen this happen too many times, where people have like miswritten their words and things like that because they're dropping N's or they're dropping H's or whatever it is they're doing. And readers get really annoyed about it. By giving your characters unique voices, what I'm meaning there is that you've got to think about their situation. A businessman is going to sound different to a student, for example. A person in retail is likely to sound different to somebody who is a CEO of a large company. Their ages, people speak differently according to how old they are. And you can quite easily let your readers know who is speaking simply by the words they use. So give that a bit of thought when you're writing your next script or your next book. Another hack, and I have reinforced this so many times. Please do not ever start with the story that it was a dark and stormy night, or the village was quiet, or the sea was calm. We don't give a crap. The reader doesn't give a crap. Jump your readers straight into the middle of an action scene. Don't worry about backstory. Don't worry about info dumping. Jump your readers straight into an action scene so that they can see from the very start that something has happened. Involve characters. You want to hook your reader about your character, onto your character straight away from the first page, because by the time they get to the end of the first chapter, you want your readers thinking, shoots, what happens next? They might not know anything about that character at all, except what's happened in that action scene, but they will want to know, so they will keep reading. Your background details and everything else can all be sprinkled through the story at a later stage. But in that first chapter, you want an action scene. You want something to happen so that when the readers get to the end of that chapter, they're like, I have got to read more. That is so important. Hack 8, I think we'd sort of kind of covered a little bit earlier, but use stronger nouns and verbs. Again, it's just using precise and powerful words, tie in with like cutting out extraneous words and making your writing stronger. You know, why say something like he walked slowly when you could say he crept? Can you see the difference just in that word? When you say he walked slowly, I'm thinking old man sauntering down the street. When you say he crept, I'm thinking, ooh, creep implies so much else, so much difference. Can you see? It's the same. Whereas if you say, oh yes, something is very big. Okay. What if that something was enormous? Yes. And it also, when you're using strong verbs and nouns that are already eliciting feelings and evoking things in your reader's brain, you don't need to use your extra descriptors as much either. If you say something like, he was very tired, you kind of need to explain it because you're not seeing why. But you'd be better to say he was exhausted, because exhausted, the reader immediately knows, oh, exhausted. Yeah, like I am at the end of the day. And if you say something like, oh, you know, this person was a very tall man, why would you say that? Because maybe everybody's tall. But if you use the word a towering man, you get the impression? You see what I mean? The reader is going to get that image then of that person being so much taller than everybody else. You can play with this in all sorts of ways, but let me know if you want a video on that, just doing that sort of thing at a later stage. Hack number 9 is edit ruthlessly. Now, I have an editor. In fact, I have two, because I am in a unique position where I was born in England, I live in New Zealand, and I write most of my stories set in the United States. So I have a New Zealand editor, or a person here in New Zealand that's known to me, who goes through and makes various changes on what have you. And then I have an American editor who goes through and and changes my Britishisms and my Kiwiisms into, what would you call them, Americanisms, I suppose. So, but it's a really good idea for yourself. Like before my books even go to the editor, I go through and edit myself. I want to know, like every day when I start writing, I first go back and read the words I did the day before. So I've put my mind back into that mindset and I have a clearer idea of where I want to go going forward. But then when I'm finished my book, I also go back to the beginning and then I read the whole thing, just tweaking here and there, editing and cutting out unnecessary words and doing my bits and pieces, although I am a very wordy author. But my readers have come to enjoy that about me, so that's just the way I am. But I want to know that my story flows. I want to know there's nothing that jars my reader out of the story, that sort of thing. So, yeah, make sure you edit your own work before you send it to your editor. And finally, hack number 10, which might sound a little bit unusual, but believe me, it works. If you want to write better, then read. Read as much as you can. Reading exposes you to so many different author styles, so many different voices, and so many different storytelling techniques, should I say. So if you want to improve your writing, make sure you're reading as well. Well, there you have it. 10 writing hacks that can and do improve your fiction. I can testify to that. Let me know in the comments which one you found that was most helpful. And then go and write something wonderful, because I can't wait to read it. In the meantime, please hug the ones you love, my friends. And until next time, bye.